My sister's feelings come first, my parents said. So I skipped their party and focused on building my own life. Now my face is on billboards, and suddenly they're asking for invites. Can you imagine driving down the highway, minding your own business, and then, bam, there it is. Your own face, 30 feet high, plastered on a billboard. But the real punch to the gut? Watching your own parents, standing below, pointing and gawking, completely oblivious it was you. They hadn't recognized me. Not really. It had been 3 years since they'd accidentally forgotten my 30th birthday. The very same day they threw a huge celebration for my sister, Amber, getting into grad school. When I dared to question this painful oversight, my dad just gave a non-committal shrug, and my mom, well, she delivered the words that carved a permanent scar. Donovan, your sister's feelings matter more right now. That was it. That moment changed everything for me. I swore that if they couldn't remember me on my own birthday, I'd build a life so undeniably remarkable, so completely unignorable, that they wouldn't have a choice but to see me. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in Portland, Oregon. From the outside, we looked like any other normal family. Dad was an accountant, Mom taught elementary school, and Amber was 3 years younger. But within those walls, a pattern had been etched deep into our lives from the very beginning. Donovan, let Amber have the last cookie. She had a hard day at school, Mom would say. Or, Donovan, can you skip your baseball game? We need to take Amber to her dance recital. And the kicker, Donovan, we're using your college fund to get Amber braces. You understand, right? You'll get scholarships anyway. Each time, I nodded. Each time, I swallowed the bitter pill of disappointment. I was the responsible one, the steady one, the one who never caused problems. I pulled straight A's, kept my room spotless, and joined every club that looked good on college applications. Meanwhile, Amber struggled socially, cried easily, and seemed to need constant reassurance. My parents poured all their attention into her, convinced she needed it more. My 10th birthday was the first major betrayal. Mom had promised a party at the local arcade with 15 friends. I had counted down the days, even meticulously made special invitations. The morning of the party, Amber woke up with a slight cough. We need to cancel your party, Mom announced, without even a hint of regret. Amber isn't feeling well. But she just has a cold, I argued, watching my sister happily play with her dolls. Clearly, she wasn't that sick. She might get worse, Donovan. We can celebrate your birthday next weekend. We never did. When I tried to bring it up again, Mom just said I was being selfish. Throughout those early years, my grandfather, Frank, was my absolute salvation. Dad's father, a retired photographer, seemed to be the only one who actually saw me. He'd invite me over on weekends, teach me about his old cameras, and tell me incredible stories about capturing moments that truly mattered. The right image can change how people see the world, Donnie, he'd say, showing me his collection of prints. Remember that. For my 12th birthday, one my parents did remember, but celebrated with a rushed cake after Amber's piano lesson, Grandpa Frank gave me his old Nikon camera. You've got an eye for what matters, he told me. Don't lose that. I treasured that camera. I learned everything I could about photography, finding escape behind the lens, where I controlled what was in focus and what wasn't. When I was 14, helping Mom clean out the attic, I stumbled upon a small notebook. Flipping through it, I realized it was a parenting journal she had kept when Amber and I were young. One entry stopped me cold. Donovan is so self-sufficient. Sometimes I worry we neglect him, but Amber needs us more. Her emotions are so raw, so immediate. Donovan will be fine whatever happens. He's like Jack, steady, practical. Amber is like me, sensitive to every slight. We need to protect her. Even if it means Donovan gets less attention, he'll understand someday. I closed the book, my hands shaking. This wasn't accidental neglect. This was a conscious choice. They had decided I mattered less because I caused less trouble. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror for a long, long time. You'll understand someday, I whispered to my reflection, mimicking my mother's words. But I didn't understand, and I wasn't sure I ever would. My college years at Oregon State, which I attended on a scholarship I'd worked relentlessly to earn, opened my eyes to what family relationships could be. Amber, despite her average grades, was sent to an expensive private university in California because she supposedly needed smaller class sizes and personal attention. My parents drove 8 hours to see Amber's art displayed in a student show. They missed my business competition where I placed second in the state. "We're so proud of you, Donovan," Mom said on the phone afterward. "We knew you'd do well without us there." They were always so proud from a distance. Their attention and resources were always directed elsewhere. My sophomore year, my roommate was Tyler Reed, a graphic design major from Seattle. We clicked immediately, bonding over our shared love of visual storytelling. But where we differed dramatically, our family dynamics. The first time I watched Tyler call his parents, I was mesmerized. They talked for almost an hour. His parents asked detailed questions about his classes, his projects, even remembered the names of his friends from previous conversations. When he hung up, Tyler noticed my expression. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," I mumbled. "Just, your parents seem really involved." Tyler shrugged. "Yeah, they're pretty great. Sometimes a bit much, but I know they've got my back." That Thanksgiving, when my parents announced they were flying to California to spend the holiday with Amber because she was feeling homesick, Tyler invited me to Seattle. The Reed family home was modest but warm. Family photos lined the staircase, not just milestone moments, but everyday captures of both Tyler and his younger brother, Nathan. What struck me most was how equally both sons were represented. At dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Reed asked me as many questions as they asked their own sons. They wanted to know about my photography, my business classes, my plans for the future. They listened when I spoke. "You're welcome anytime, Donovan," Mrs. Reed said as I left. "Any friend of Tyler's is family here." I nearly cried on the drive back to campus. That same year, I took a marketing course with Professor Carter, a former advertising executive who had built several successful campaigns before turning to teaching. After I submitted a project combining photography and market research, he asked me to stay after class. "You have a unique perspective, Donovan," he said. "Your visuals tell a story that your data supports. That's rare." He became a mentor, encouraging me to pursue internships that combine my analytical skills and creative eye. When I confided in him about my family situation, he didn't offer empty sympathy. "Some people won't see your value," he said simply. "That doesn't diminish it. Build something so significant they can't ignore it." By my junior year, I had built a solid portfolio and secured a summer internship at a respected Portland agency. Meanwhile, my parents took out a second mortgage on their house, a fact I discovered accidentally during a home visit when I overheard a phone call. "Yes, the loan is for educational purposes," my father said to someone on the phone. "Our daughters study abroad program in Paris." Later that week, when I mentioned applying to a summer graduate program in New York, my parents exchanged glances. "We just don't have the money to help with that right now, Donovan," Mom said. "I'm not asking for tuition," I clarified. "Just the $500 application fee. I'll work to cover the rest." Dad shook his head. "Times are tight. You understand." I nodded the way I always did. But this time, understanding came with a chilling clarity. They had leveraged their home to send Amber to Paris, but couldn't find $500 to support my graduate application. The message couldn't have been clearer if they'd written it on the wall. Amber's opportunities would always outweigh mine. That summer, as I worked 2 jobs to save for my application fee, Grandpa Frank's health began to decline. I visited him every weekend, showing him my photography and telling him about the campaigns I was developing. "You're building something important," he told me, his voice weaker, but his eyes still sharp. "Don't let anyone tell you different, not even your parents." After graduation, I secured an entry-level position at Cooper & Daniels, a mid-sized marketing firm in downtown Portland. The pay wasn't impressive, but the opportunity was. I threw myself into every project, arriving early and staying late, volunteering for the challenging clients other team members avoided. Within 18 months, I had helped land 2 major accounts. My campaign for a local credit union increased their new customer acquisition by 32%. The creative director, Scott Barnes, took notice. "You've got something special, Donovan," he said. "Keep this up and you'll go far here." Around this time, I met Jessica at a photography exhibit. She was a graphic designer who truly appreciated the stories behind images. Our connection was immediate, and it was deep. Unlike previous relationships where I had hidden the complications of my family dynamic, with Jessica, I was honest from the start. "That explains a lot about you," she said after I told her about my parents' favoritism toward Amber. "You're incredibly self-sufficient, sometimes to a fault." "Is that bad?" I asked. "No," she said, taking my hand. But you don't always have to handle everything alone anymore. As my 30th birthday approached, I decided to plan a modest celebration. Dinner at my favorite restaurant with Jessica, Tyler and his girlfriend, and a few work friends. After some consideration, I invited my parents and Amber, too. It would mean a lot to have you there, I told my mother over the phone. I've reserved a table for 8 at Riverside Grill for 7 o'clock. We'll be there, honey, she promised. I've marked it on the calendar. I confirmed twice more in the weeks leading up to the dinner. Each time, they assured me they would attend. For once, I thought they would show up for me. The day before my birthday, I called one last time. Mom, just confirming for tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. There was an awkward pause. Oh, Donovan, I'm so sorry. We completely forgot. Amber just got her acceptance to graduate school, and we're throwing a celebration for her tomorrow night. Everyone's already invited. My stomach dropped. You forgot my 30th birthday? The one I've been reminding you about for weeks. Don't make this difficult, honey. You know how hard Amber's worked for this. We can take you to lunch next weekend. I was speechless. Hurt crystallized into pure, searing anger. Mom, this is my 30th birthday. I've been planning this dinner for months. You promised you'd be there. Don't be selfish, Donovan. This is a huge moment for your sister. That evening, Jessica found me staring at my phone, still in shock. I showed her the text from my father. Sorry about dinner. Your sister's celebration has been in the works for weeks. She needs this recognition. See you soon. Jessica read it twice. They planned a competing celebration? For weeks? While confirming they'd come to yours. I nodded, numb. That's not right, Donovan. That's cruel. The next day, my actual birthday, I went to work as usual. My colleagues surprised me with a cake at lunch. My boss approved the proposal I'd been working on for months. Jessica planned a special dinner for just the two of us. It should have been enough, but the absence of my family left a gaping hole nothing could fill. That evening, scrolling through social media, I saw dozens of photos from Amber's celebration. My parents had rented a private room at an upscale restaurant. They'd invited extended family and friends. There was a professional cake with congratulations, Amber, written in elegant script. My mother's post read, celebrating our amazing daughter's acceptance to UCLA's graduate program. No one deserves this more. No mention of my birthday. Not even a private message. I was still staring at those photos when my father called. Donovan, your mother says you seemed upset earlier. I hope you're not still hung up about the dinner. You've known about my birthday plans for months, Dad. You confirmed multiple times. Look, son, sometimes family means making sacrifices. Your sister needs this win. She's been struggling with her confidence. And what about what I need? The question escaped before I could stop it. My father sighed, the sound of a man dealing with an unreasonable child. Donovan, I'm going to tell you something your mother wouldn't want me to say. The truth is, you've always been the strong one. You don't need the validation Amber does. You've always succeeded regardless of whether we're cheering from the sidelines. That doesn't mean I don't want you there. Your sister's feelings matter more right now. She's more fragile than you. You need to accept that. Jessica walked into the room as I ended the call. She took one look at my face and sat beside me. My parents just told me in the clearest possible terms that my feelings don't matter, I said, my voice hollow. Jessica took my hand, intertwining her fingers with mine. I need to tell you something. And I was going to wait until the weekend, but I think you need to hear it now. She took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. The world seemed to stop. We're having a baby. She nodded, her eyes searching mine. We're having a baby. Joy rushed through me, followed immediately by a new, fierce perspective on my parents' betrayal. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about my child. Would my parents treat my child as less important than Amber's future children? Would they miss my child's birthdays because Amber's kids had school events? I won't let them do to our child what they did to me, I said firmly. Jessica squeezed my hand. We're going to build our own family, with different values, starting now. The dual shock of my parents' betrayal and Jessica's pregnancy news left me reeling for days. I moved through work mechanically, my mind constantly returning to my father's words. Your sister's feelings matter more. A week later, I received a call from the assisted living facility where Grandpa Frank lived. He had suffered a stroke and was in the hospital. I left work immediately and drove straight to Providence Medical Center. My parents arrived shortly after I did. The doctors say it was a major event, Dad told me in the waiting room, his voice strained. They're not optimistic. When we were finally allowed to see him, Grandpa Frank looked small in the hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines. Despite his weakened state, his eyes found mine when I entered the room. "Donnie," he whispered, using the nickname only he ever called me. I sat beside him, taking his hand carefully. "I'm here, Grandpa." He gestured weakly for me to come closer. When I leaned in, he spoke in a raspy voice. "Build something they can't ignore. Promise me." "I promise," I said, tears threatening. His eyes closed, and he drifted back to sleep. The doctor told us he might have days or weeks, but recovery was unlikely given his age and the severity of the stroke. Over the next 3 days, I split my time between the hospital and work, sleeping little. During one of my visits, I found my mother sitting alone with Grandpa Frank. "Dad just left to get coffee," she said. "Amber's flying in tomorrow." I nodded, taking the seat on the opposite side of the bed. "Your sister's pretty upset," Mom continued. "She's worried she won't get here in time to say goodbye." "We're all upset, Mom." She looked surprised, as if she hadn't considered my feelings in the equation. "Of course, but you're handling it so well. You always do." There it was again. The expectation that I would be fine, that my calm exterior meant I wasn't hurting inside. I wondered if they had any idea who I really was. 2 days later, I received a text from Amber. "Big celebration for my grad school acceptance this Saturday. Mom and Dad really want you there. They say you've been distant." I stared at the message for a long time. The celebration had been rescheduled for my birthday. Apparently, they expected me to show up and smile and congratulate my sister after everything. For the first time in my life, I typed, "I won't be there." The response was immediate. "What do you mean?" "It's important. I'm dealing with a lot right now. Grandpa's condition. Work. Jessica's pregnant." There was a long pause before Amber replied. "You got Jessica pregnant and didn't tell us? Mom's going to be upset you told me first." No congratulations. No acknowledgement of my impending fatherhood. Just concern about my mother's feelings about the order of information sharing. I turned off my phone. That night, I talked with Jessica about my decision to skip Amber's celebration. "I've never said no to them before," I admitted. "I've always been the one to bend, to accommodate." Jessica placed her hand over mine. "Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do in a relationship is establish boundaries. This isn't about punishing them. It's about respecting yourself. They won't see it that way." "That's not your responsibility," she said firmly. "Your responsibility now is to us, to our family." The next day brought a barrage of messages from my parents, each more insistent than the last. My mother's final voicemail was particularly telling. "Donovan James Turner, I don't know what's gotten into you. After everything we've done for you, you can't take one evening to celebrate your sister's achievement? This selfishness isn't like you. Call me back immediately." After everything they'd done for me. The phrase echoed in my mind as I deleted the message. What exactly did they think they had done for me? Provided the minimum while making it explicitly clear I was the less important child? 3 days later, Grandpa Frank passed away peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was small but dignified, just as he would have wanted. As the family gathered at my parents' house afterward, I felt like a stranger among them, going through the motions of accepting condolences and making small talk. A week after the funeral, I received a call from Grandpa's attorney. To my surprise, he had left me his photography equipment, a small savings account containing $35,000, and a sealed letter. Alone in our apartment that evening, I opened the envelope with trembling hands. "Donnie," it began. "If you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. Don't waste time grieving. I've had a good run. Instead, remember what I've taught you about seeing what others miss. You've always had that gift, seeing the truth behind the surface. It's what makes your photography special, and it's what will make you successful in whatever you choose to do. The money isn't much, but it's seed capital for that dream you've been talking about. Take the risk, build something meaningful, and remember, true success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by the life you create and the people you gather around you. I've always been proud of you, not because of what you've achieved, but because of who you are. Don't let anyone make you forget your worth. Love, Grandpa Frank." I folded the letter carefully and held it to my chest, feeling both profound loss and unexpected, powerful direction. The next morning, I had a meeting with Scott Barnes about the promotion I'd been working toward for months. I had developed a comprehensive campaign for our newest client, a sustainable clothing brand looking to expand nationally. The presentation was polished, innovative, and backed by solid research. My best work to date. Scott seemed impressed as I walked him through the strategy. This is excellent, Donovan. Really forward-thinking. Thank you. I've put everything into this project. I can tell. In fact, he paused, shuffling some papers on his desk. This approach is very similar to what I presented to the executive team last week. I froze. What do you mean? Great minds, I guess. His smile didn't reach his eyes. The point is, the campaign's been approved. We're moving forward with it. With my campaign, under your name? With the campaign, he corrected smoothly. We're all part of the same team here. I sat back, a cold realization washing over me. I was being overlooked again, but in a different context. My work was valuable, but I wasn't being valued for creating it. It was a painfully familiar dynamic. I put hundreds of hours into developing this strategy, I said quietly. And you'll be acknowledged in the credits, Donovan, Scott assured me. This is how you climb the ladder. You're still young. Your time will come. I nodded, just as I had nodded all my life when accepting less than I deserved. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and stared at my computer screen. Professor Carter's words echoed in my mind. Build something so significant they can't ignore it. By the end of the day, I had made my decision. I drafted my resignation letter, effective 2 weeks from that day. When I told Jessica that evening, she didn't seem surprised. You've been talking about starting your own agency for years, she said. Maybe this is the push you needed. It's a huge risk, especially with the baby coming. We have Grandpa Frank's money as a cushion, and I can keep freelancing until the baby comes. We'll make it work. You're not worried? She took my face in her hands. Of course I'm worried. But I believe in you, Donovan. I've seen what you can do. It's time everyone else did, too. Starting my own creative marketing agency was equal parts terrifying and liberating. I rented a small office space in a building filled with other startups, bought essential equipment with Grandpa Frank's inheritance, and officially incorporated Turner Visual Strategies. The first 6 months were brutal. I worked 18-hour days, reaching out to every contact I had made over the years, developing speculative campaigns to show potential clients, and refining my unique approach that combined storytelling photography with data-driven marketing strategies. 3 months in, Jessica's pregnancy developed complications. Her doctor ordered bed rest for the remainder of her term, adding financial and emotional strain as her freelance work slowed to a trickle. Maybe I should go back to a regular job, I told her one night as I massaged her swollen feet. Something stable with benefits. Is that what you want? She asked. No, but I want security for you and the baby more. She shook her head firmly. We didn't come this far for you to give up now. The doctor says the baby and I will be fine with proper care. We can manage for a few more months. My parents' reaction to my career change had been predictably negative. This is the most irresponsible thing you've ever done, my mother declared over the phone. Quitting a good job when you have a baby on the way. What were you thinking? I was thinking I don't want to spend my life watching other people take credit for my work, I replied. That's how businesses operate, Donovan. You pay your dues. You're just being impatient. When I didn't immediately agree with her assessment, she switched tactics. Your sister's wedding is in 4 months. I hope you're planning to be there. The family needs to present a united front. I hadn't even known Amber was engaged. I'll do my best, I said noncommittally. That's not good enough. She's your sister, and she's asked Jessica to be a bridesmaid. This was news to me, and apparently to Jessica as well, who raised her eyebrows from across the room. Mom, Jessica is on bed rest. She can't be a bridesmaid. Well, that's inconvenient timing, my mother said with a sigh. Amber will be so disappointed. I ended the call shortly after, marveling at how my mother could make Jessica's health complications sound like a deliberate slight against my sister. As my fledgling business struggled to find its footing, an unexpected opportunity arose from a chance encounter. During one of Jessica's hospital checkups, I struck up a conversation with an older gentleman in the waiting room. William Hargrove was there for his wife's cardiology appointment, and we passed the time discussing everything from photography to business ethics. When he asked about my work, I shared my vision for Turner Visual Strategies. Interesting approach, he said, combining visual storytelling with market analytics. Not many agencies do both well. I handed him my business card. We're small, but we deliver results. He studied the card, then reached into his wallet and handed me his. North Star Organics, it read. William Hargrove, board chairman. My heart jumped. North Star was one of the fastest-growing organic food companies in the Pacific Northwest. We're looking to refresh our brand identity, he said casually. Our current agency doesn't quite understand our vision. Perhaps you could share some ideas. 2 weeks and several late nights later, I presented a comprehensive strategy to North Star's marketing team. To my surprise, William Hargrove himself attended. You said, "We on the phone," he noted after my presentation. How big is your team currently? It's just me and my partner, plus contractors as needed, I admitted. But that means you get senior-level attention on every aspect of your campaign. He nodded thoughtfully. Frankly, I like what I see better than what we've gotten from agencies 10 times your size. Let's give this a try. As I drove home, I called Jessica with the news. We got North Star, a 6-month contract to start. Her excited squeal was the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. The North Star account changed everything. Their initial project led to referrals, and suddenly Turner Visual Strategies had more work than I could handle alone. I hired 2 junior designers and a project manager, then leased a larger office space. In the midst of this professional chaos, Jessica went into labor 4 weeks early. After 12 intense hours, our son, Jackson Frank Turner, was born, small but healthy. Holding him for the first time, I made a silent promise that he would never question his place in my heart. My parents visited the hospital briefly, bringing a small gift and offering perfunctory congratulations. He looks like Amber did as a baby, my mother remarked, somehow making even this moment about my sister. In stark contrast, Tyler and his parents drove down from Seattle with homemade meals for us to freeze, a handcrafted wooden rocking chair, and genuine excitement about becoming honorary grandparents. As Jackson grew stronger and Jessica recovered, I divided my time between family and building the business. When Jackson was 2 months old, I received an unexpected call from William Hargrove. "Donovan, I've been following your work with North Star. The engagement metrics on that last campaign were impressive." "Thank you, sir. We've been working to really highlight your company's commitment to sustainability." "That's actually why I'm calling. I have a friend, Franklin Morris. He sits on the board at Verdant Ventures." I nearly dropped the phone. Verdant was one of the largest investment firms focused exclusively on environmental businesses. They're looking to rebrand several companies in their portfolio. I've recommended you. It would be a major contract, likely more than you can handle with your current team. "I can scale up," I said immediately. "Quality won't be compromised." "I believe you. There's one more thing." He paused. "Franklin was friends with your grandfather. He's been watching your progress since Frank passed. Said Frank always believed you were building something special." The connection stunned me. Had Grandpa Frank known William Hargrove? Had this opportunity been his final gift? "I didn't know they were acquainted," I said carefully. "Oh yes. Photography club decades ago. Franklin mentioned Frank had quite an eye. Said you inherited it." After the call ended, I sat in silence, processing this revelation. My grandfather had believed in me enough to put his reputation on the line with his friends, even after he was gone. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the opportunity. The Verdant Ventures contract was a turning point. I hired 5 more employees, including an experienced account director from a major agency. Jessica returned to work part-time, bringing her design expertise to select projects while caring for Jackson with the help of a nanny 3 days a week. For the first time in my life, I felt seen for my actual abilities, valued for my unique perspective. The business grew steadily, and by Jackson's first birthday, Turner Visual Strategies had become a respected boutique agency specializing in sustainable brands. My relationship with my parents remained distant. They called occasionally, usually to relay news about Amber or to ask when we'd visit. They never acknowledged the growing success of my business or showed interest in Jackson beyond perfunctory questions. When Amber's engagement ended abruptly, her fiancé apparently left after discovering she had significant debt. She moved back in with my parents. Within weeks, my mother called asking if I could loan them money to help with Amber's credit card bills. "She's really struggling, Donovan, and we're on a fixed income now that your father's retired." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "But we're reinvesting everything into growing the business right now." "But you're doing so well," she pressed. "Surely you can spare a few thousand to help your sister?" The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of being overlooked in favor of Amber, now that I had built something valuable, They wanted to redirect those resources back to her. I can't, Mom. I have employees who depend on me, a family to support. We're your family, too, she said, her voice tight with disapproval. Or have you forgotten that? The question lingered with me long after we hung up. They were my family. But what did that really mean when the relationship had been so one-sided for so long? A week later, my parents showed up unannounced at my office. The receptionist, not knowing the complicated history, led them straight to my glass-walled conference room where I was meeting with a major potential client. I excused myself briefly and stepped outside. Mom, Dad, this isn't a good time. I'm in the middle of an important meeting. They looked around the modern office space with undisguised surprise. Staff members worked at sleek desks. A large screen displayed campaign metrics, and the walls featured framed examples of our work, many showing my distinctive photographic style. This is quite an operation, my father said, sounding genuinely impressed for the first time. We had no idea. What did you think I was doing? I asked. My mother had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. We thought it was just you and maybe a partner working out of an apartment or something. We've been featured in Marketing Weekly twice this year, I said. We have 17 full-time employees. They exchanged glances, something unreadable passing between them. We should let you get back to your meeting, my father said finally. Perhaps we could have dinner soon. Bring Jessica and the baby. His name is Jackson, I corrected. And I'll check our schedule. I need to get back now. As I returned to my meeting, I caught them staring at a large framed photo in our reception area, one I had taken of a child playing in a field of wildflowers for an organic dairy campaign. It had won a regional advertising award. I wondered if they were finally seeing me, really seeing me for the first time. The next year passed in a blur of growth and challenges. Turner Visual Strategies expanded to 30 employees, moved to a larger office in a renovated industrial building, and developed a reputation for innovative campaigns that delivered measurable results. Our client list grew to include national brands committed to sustainability and social responsibility. My approach to leadership was deliberately different from what I had experienced both at home and in my corporate job. I created a culture where everyone's contributions were acknowledged, where credit was given where it was due, and where success was celebrated collectively. Jessica transitioned from part-time contributor to full partner in the business, heading our design department and bringing a fresh perspective to our creative process. Jackson, now a curious toddler, spent 3 days a week at the on-site childcare facility we had established for employees with young children, a benefit I had insisted on after seeing how many talented people struggled with work-life balance. Our breakthrough campaign came unexpectedly. A major eco-friendly household products company approached us after seeing our work for Verdant Ventures. They wanted to reposition their brand to appeal to mainstream consumers without losing their environmental credibility. We need a campaign that makes sustainability feel accessible, not preachy, their marketing director explained. Inspired by my own journey from being overlooked to finding my voice, I developed a concept called Seen and Heard, featuring ordinary people making small but meaningful environmental choices in their everyday lives. I personally photographed the subjects, capturing authentic moments that told their stories visually, while our team developed messaging that connected these individual actions to a larger impact. The campaign launched across multiple platforms, including television, social media, and yes, billboards. As the photographer and creative director, my name appeared in the credits, and occasionally my face appeared in industry publications covering the campaign's success. One particular billboard featured my photograph of a father teaching his daughter to plant a garden with the tagline, "Small actions seen and valued." The image had been captured during a shoot in Portland's community gardens and had particular resonance for me. The father's attentive focus on his child's effort represented everything I hoped to embody as Jackson's father. That billboard, 30 feet tall, was placed prominently along Portland's main highway, the same one my parents drove on their weekly shopping trips. The campaign exceeded all expectations, increasing the client's sales by 27% and winning multiple industry awards. Turner Visual Strategies was suddenly on the map nationally, featured in major marketing publications, and held up as an example of how boutique agencies could compete with established giants. Jessica and I were having dinner at home one evening when my phone buzzed with a text from Amber. "Just saw your face on the news. They're saying you're up for the Crestwood Award. Were you planning to tell us?" I stared at the message in surprise. The Crestwood was one of the most prestigious awards in marketing. I knew we had been nominated for the Seen and Heard campaign, but hadn't realized it had made the news. Before I could respond, another text arrived. Mom and Dad saw your billboard last week. They were pretty shocked. I showed the messages to Jessica, who raised her eyebrows. Sounds like you've officially become too successful to ignore, she said with a slight smile. I never thought we'd be nominated for something like the Crestwood, I admitted. Not this soon. You deserve it, Jessica said firmly. Your concept, your photography, your direction, it's all you. The Crestwood nomination brought a flurry of media interest. I was asked to give interviews about the campaign and our agency's approach. A local business magazine wanted to do a profile piece on Turner Visual Strategies as a Portland success story. And the most unexpected request? A television interview on a national morning show to discuss the growing trend of smaller agencies creating award-winning work. 2 days after the nomination was announced, my parents called. Donovan, my mother began, her voice unusually tentative. We saw the article in the Oregonian about your award nomination. Congratulations. Thank you, I said, waiting for what would come next. We had no idea your business had become so significant, my father added. The paper said you have 30 employees now. 34, actually. We're still growing. That's wonderful, my mother said, sounding genuinely impressed. We're very proud. The words I had longed to hear for so much of my life landed strangely now. After years of indifference, their pride felt like too little, too late. The thing is, my mother continued, the article mentioned you're doing a television interview next week. We'd love to come watch, maybe have dinner afterward to celebrate. I hesitated, conflicting emotions swirling. Part of me, the child who had always craved their approval, wanted to say yes immediately. But the man I had become recognized the pattern. Now that I had something they valued, suddenly they were interested. I'll need to check our schedule, I said neutrally. The interview prep is taking a lot of time, and we have Jackson's doctor appointment that same day. How is our grandson? My mother asked, the forced brightness in her tone unmistakable. He's great. Walking everywhere, talking up a storm. We've barely seen him, she said, a note of accusation creeping in. It's been months. I know, I acknowledged. It's been a busy time. What I didn't say was, you showed minimal interest in him until you saw my face on a billboard. The television interview posed a dilemma. The producers wanted me to discuss my journey, how a boutique agency from Portland had created a campaign that resonated nationally. They would inevitably ask about my background, my influences, my path to founding the agency. Would I tell the truth about my family? Would I describe how being consistently overlooked had fueled my determination to build something undeniable? I discussed it with Jessica the night before the interview. You don't owe them protection, she said thoughtfully. But you don't owe the world your pain either. This is your moment. Use it however feels right to you. The morning of the interview, I received a text from Amber. Good luck today. We'll be watching. It was the first supportive message she had ever sent me. In the television studio, under bright lights, with a friendly host asking questions, I made my choice. When asked about my influences, I spoke about Grandpa Frank and his belief in the power of seeing what others missed. When asked about challenges, I talked about the difficulty of breaking into a competitive industry as a small agency. When asked about my driving motivation, I spoke about creating a company culture where everyone felt valued and seen. I didn't mention my parents or my childhood. I didn't share how being the less favored child had shaped me. Instead, I focused on what I had built, not what I had overcome. The interview went well. The host was engaged. The segment producer gave me a thumbs up from behind the camera. And afterward, several people asked for my business card. Outside the studio, I checked my phone to find multiple congratulatory messages from employees and friends, and one from my father. You were excellent, very articulate. Your mother's crying. Good tears. Can we meet? I texted back, thank you. Have plans with Jackson tonight. We'll call tomorrow. As I drove home, I realized something important had shifted. For the first time in my life, I wasn't anxiously awaiting their approval or aching from their oversight. I had built something they couldn't ignore, just as I had promised Grandpa Frank. But somewhere along the way, their recognition had ceased to be the point. My success wasn't about making them see me anymore. It was about seeing myself clearly and creating a life that reflected my values. The billboard, the awards, the growing business. These weren't weapons to wield against past hurts. They were the natural results of channeling those experiences into something constructive. Jessica and Jackson were waiting when I got home. My son toddled to the door, arms outstretched, his face lit with pure joy at my return. Jessica smiled over his head, pride evident in her eyes. "How does it feel to be a television star?" she teased. "Strange," I admitted, lifting Jackson into my arms. "But good." That night, as we played with Jackson on the living room floor, I found myself reflecting on the long journey from that forgotten birthday to this moment. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. Perhaps it never would, but it no longer defined me. I had built something meaningful, not just professionally, but personally. A loving partnership, a child who would never question his worth, a business where people felt valued. I had made them remember me, yes. But more importantly, I had remembered myself. The morning after the television interview, I woke to the news that Turner Visual Strategies had won the Crestwood Award. The announcement had come early, ahead of the formal ceremony scheduled for the following month. My phone buzzed constantly with congratulations from colleagues, clients, and industry contacts. William Hargrove was among the first to call. "I just heard the news." Frank would be bursting with pride. "Thank you for believing in us from the beginning," I told him. "We wouldn't be here without that first opportunity." "Nonsense," he replied. "You would have found your way. Talent always does, eventually." Later that morning, I received a more surprising call from Scott Barnes, my former boss. "Congratulations, Donovan," he said, sounding genuinely impressed. "The Crestwood is a big deal. You've really built something remarkable." "Thank you, Scott. I'll admit, when you left, I thought you were making a mistake. I was wrong." He paused. "The campaign that won, that visual storytelling approach, it's what you were trying to convince me to pursue back then, isn't it?" "Elements of it, yes." "Well, I should have listened. Clearly, you were on to something important." His acknowledgement was unexpected, but gratifying. It confirmed what I had come to believe. Being overlooked had never been about my lack of value. It had been about others' inability or unwillingness to see it. The award announcement brought another wave of media attention. Our client roster expanded rapidly as companies sought the agency behind the Seen and Heard campaign. We hired 10 more employees and began planning for larger office space. Jessica and I even discussed opening a second location in Seattle, where several potential clients were based. In the midst of this professional whirlwind, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. Something so unusual it took me a moment to recognize her handwriting on the envelope. "Dear Donovan," it began. "Your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking since seeing you on television. The pride we felt watching you speak so confidently about your work made us realize how little we know about your life now. It also forced us to look back and acknowledge some uncomfortable truths. We didn't treat you fairly growing up. We told ourselves we were doing what was best for both our children, giving more attention to Amber because she seemed to need it more. We didn't consider how that might affect you. We took your strength for granted and often overlooked your needs. Seeing you now, successful, respected, and clearly flourishing, we are deeply proud. But we also recognize that your success came despite our shortcomings, not because of our support. That's a hard reality to face as parents. We would like a chance to know you as you are now, to meet our grandson properly, to try to be better parents and grandparents than we have been. We understand if you need time to consider this request. We'll respect whatever boundaries you set. With love and regret, Mom." I read the letter 3 times, emotions churning. It was the first real acknowledgement from either parent that their treatment of me had been unfair. After years of justifications and deflections, the simple admission felt monumental. That evening, I shared the letter with Jessica. "What do you think?" I asked after she had read it. "I think it's a start," she said carefully. "A genuine one. But only you can decide if it's enough to rebuild from." "I'm not sure I know how to have a balanced relationship with them," I admitted. "I've never had one." "Maybe that's something you can figure out together," she suggested, "if you want to try." Jackson, now nearly 2, raced through the room, chasing the cat, his laughter filling our home. I watched him, thinking about family and forgiveness, and the cycles we choose to break or perpetuate. I do want to try, I decided. Not for them, but for him. And for me. I called my parents the next day and invited them to our home for dinner that weekend. The conversation was awkward, but civil. They brought a gift for Jackson, a children's camera, surprisingly thoughtful given his fascination with my photography equipment. When he warmed up to them after initial shyness, I saw genuine delight in their interactions with him. Over the following months, we established a tentative new relationship. I maintained clear boundaries, but allowed small openings for them to show they could be different. Sometimes they succeeded. Sometimes old patterns emerged. But the effort on both sides was real. Amber and I had our own reckoning during this time. After some initial awkwardness, we had a frank conversation about our childhood and the dynamic our parents had created between us. I didn't realize how uneven things were, she admitted. From my perspective, I just always felt I had mom and dad's support. That's exactly it, I said. You did. I didn't. I'm sorry, Donovan. I should have seen it. You were a kid, too, I reminded her. It wasn't your responsibility to fix our parents' behavior. Over time, Amber found her own path, working at a nonprofit focused on childhood education and gradually becoming more independent from our parents. She became a surprisingly devoted aunt to Jackson, bringing an energy and playfulness to their relationship that enriched his life. As the awards ceremony for the Crestwood approached, I faced a decision. Would I invite my parents? After consideration, I sent the invitation. This wasn't about seeking their approval anymore. It was about allowing them to witness a significant moment if they chose to be present. They came. They dressed up. They sat with Jessica's parents, whom they had met only a few times before. They listened as my name was called, as the work was praised, as colleagues applauded. Afterward, my father shook my hand with unusual emotion, and my mother hugged me tightly. We always knew you were special, she said. I didn't point out the irony. Instead, I simply said, thank you for coming. In the months that followed, Turner Visual Strategies continued to thrive. The foundation we established to support overlooked children with creative potential, funded by a percentage of our profits, became a particular source of pride. We provided scholarships, mentorship, and resources to young people whose talents might otherwise go unrecognized. Jessica and I welcomed a daughter, naming her Claire Frances Turner, in honor of Grandpa Frank. Jackson took his role as big brother seriously, showing her his favorite toys and reading to her from picture books he had memorized. On my 35th birthday, 5 years after the birthday my parents had forgotten, we hosted a gathering at our home. Friends, colleagues, Jessica's family, and yes, my parents and Amber all came together to celebrate. There was good food, laughter, and a sense of genuine connection. During a quiet moment, my mother approached me with a small box. We found these recently, she said, handing it to me. Inside were photographs I had never seen before. Pictures from birthdays throughout my childhood, me blowing out candles at 8, opening presents at 12, smiling with friends at 16. My parents had been there for more moments than I remembered. We did celebrate you, my mother said softly. Not always well, not always equally, but you were loved, Donovan. Imperfectly, but truly. I nodded, accepting both the photos and the complicated truth they represented. My past couldn't be rewritten, but perhaps it could be viewed with more nuance than I had allowed myself to see. Later that evening, as the party wound down, I found a moment alone with Jessica on our back porch. Happy birthday, she said, leaning her head against my shoulder. Was it a good one? I looked through the window at our home, filled with people who saw me clearly, who valued what I brought to their lives. My children, secure in the knowledge they were cherished exactly as they were. My business, built on the principle that everyone deserves to be seen and heard. And yes, my parents, imperfect but trying to do better. The best, I answered truthfully. Not because of what anyone did for me, but because of what we've built together. The journey from being overlooked to creating a life where I was truly seen hadn't been easy. There had been pain, disappointment, and moments of deep hurt along the way. But standing there, I realized I wouldn't change the path that had led me to this place. Every challenge had shaped me. Every obstacle had strengthened my resolve. Every overlooked moment had clarified what mattered most, creating spaces where people felt valued. Beginning with myself. I had made them remember me, yes. But more importantly, I had remembered what I was worth all along. Have you ever felt overlooked by the people who should have valued you most? How did you respond to that experience? Did you fight to be seen? Or did you build your own path where your worth was recognized? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges and building success on your own terms. And share this with someone who might need to be reminded of their worth today. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember, the people who couldn't see your value don't determine your worth. You do.